I've mentioned this to you before, but in the early 2000s, I used to play quite a bit of disc golf with Marshall Bimbo, who's a pastor at Grace Community Church now, but we played at Barber Park, and I've always used Innova discs, and back then Innova did not have a number system, and so you've noticed, a lot of you have asked about the different numbers on these discs, and there are various brands of discs, but I've always used Innova, so I can speak to that a little bit better, understand those. But the four numbers, I wanted to describe those to you, and then just kind of wrap up with a spiritual analogy, of course, with direction and understanding how these discs fly. So so the four numbers. The first number is speed, the second number is glide, the third number is turn, and the last number is fade. And just real quick explanation, and I think most of you have Innova discs, so you can pull out your disc and you can maybe understand a little bit more. But that first number, speed, is from 1 to 14. And, for the longest time, I only used, my top number was probably 7 or maybe 8. So I would have a cheetah or a leopard or, one of those discs. But generally, if you're beginning to play, you don't want a 13 speed disc. Those discs are very hard to throw because you have to generate so much power. So as you play more and you get a feel for it and understand how to generate more spin, more power, you can start moving up the number scale. So anyway, those high-speed discs, once you're able to throw those, it's funny because, man, they go okay in a headwind. Actually, a slight headwind is better for those. Whereas if you have a headwind with a lower speed disc, it's just not going to happen. It's not going to work. But the lower speed discs are easier to throw and better for beginners. And so your disc, again, I mentioned maybe a Thunderbird or a Eagle. Those are right around 8 or 9, and you may want to start moving up to like a Wraith, and maybe even like an Ape is really a high-speed disc. But those things are going to turn fast, and the reason they do that is they don't have enough power. So that's something to remember, to take your time with that. The lower speed discs also do better with a downwind, which is really interesting. Second number is glide, and that's from 1 to 7. And basically, glide is just maintaining that loft, sort of that last little float. And if you're newer to the game, you want discs that have a greater glide. So you want like a 5 or 6. You can get more distance when you have a higher glide. Discs with less glide, though, are more accurate in high wind situation, which is really an interesting thing to remember. The third number is turn, and so this ranges from +1 to -5. And if you are throwing backhand, if you're right-handed and you're throwing backhand, basically what this number is telling you is if the disc turns to the right during the initial part of the flight. I'm not talking about the end of the flight. That's the last number. This is the initial part of the flight that the disc will turn back to the right. So a couple of examples, y'all have a rock or a shark. Those are 0 turn. That's why they fly so straight. Those are great discs to have. I have a Thunderbird, which is more of a fairway driver disc, and again, that is a 0 turn, so that's going to fly pretty straight. The Stingray, however, is a -3. And so with a backhand, that disc is going to turn a little bit to the right. Wombat, a little bit of a right. Valkyrie, a little bit of a right. So those are all negative numbers. Now the last number is fade. And so this is what the disc does at the end of the flight. Now some of you have a shark, and so that shark will fly straight, but then at the end of the flight, it will turn left. It will fade, and this is it again. If you're right hand backhand, throwing that shark will go straight, and then it'll turn off. That's a 2. So that's a 0 to 5 is fade. So shark is a 2. A rock is a 3. So that's interesting too. The rock will fly straight. And then at the end, it will hook a little bit left. The Wombat, which I have, has a 0 fade. That sucker, man, I just threw it the other day, and it just landed at the end of the flight. It was just straight as an arrow. A Valkyrie, again, is a 4. And so that will really, at the end of the flight, that will end a lot left. And I think a couple of you have a Valkyrie. So, so those are the 4 numbers: speed, 1 to 14, glide, 1 to 7, turn, +1 to -5, and fade, 0 to 5. And learning these numbers really will help you be able to use the right disc at the right time, which is very key to the game. I don't think you need to have 20 discs in your bag. Honestly, my bag will only hold 6 discs, and I think that is plenty for these courses around here. These numbers can also push you to use them, and especially the speed, to really learn how to generate more speed so you can use some of these upper level discs that can cut through the wind, and it's just a lot of fun. So here, I want to end with just a quick tie into the spiritual life. And man, in my work, I meet with a lot of people, and they're asking for discernment on, what does God want, and what is he saying to me? And and it's important for me not to give any direct answers, but I usually point them to 3 or 4 verses, and these verses are different at different times, but really think of it this way. God's will, his desire for you in decision making is really to know him, to be friends with him. And so if you have an option 1 or option 2, and you've got to choose between these 2 things, and I think the heart of God would be choose one. I'm with you, and as long as one of them isn't harmful or sinful, just choose. I want to be with you, and I want you to know me in that process. And sometimes I even wonder, why did God give us such desire? And I think he really can work through our desire. This is a very unpopular and confusing thought, because really people are like, well, no, he wants me to die to all my desires. And well, I think there are times where we might say, God, what do you want? And I wonder if there are times that he wants to turn to us and ask, what do we want? And I think that's an important thing to consider, especially as we pray through decisions or something that is in front of us. So I just want to end. Here's a couple verses, 4 verses. Here you go. 4 verses that you could look up if you're wrestling through, what do I do, and how do I make decisions, and how do I kind of move through this week. Proverbs 3, 5-6 is a great Old Testament verse on just a simple trust in God. That's really what it's about. Romans 12, 1-2, where I think it's really God's will that we have our minds renewed and be changed from that. 1 Thessalonians 4:3 just talks about God's will is for you to grow and to become more holy and to become like him. And then John 15, 1-5 is just hey, if you do anything, just remain close to my love, remain close to my words to you. Just live life with me and let me live life in you, and fruit will come out of that. So there you go. I hope y'all have a great week. I think I wrote down a few times that I'm going to be out this week, and I hope to see you out there. Just let me know, and hope you throw them straight this week.